Good afternoon. Let's do some business. We are doing it live right here, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. We get right down to business with the news-driven hour right after Ben Shapiro. And just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5, Motec on Money, live on the air. 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And your on-demand Motec on Money podcast at kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, and all your favorite podcast platforms. Well, more fireworks on Wall Street. Happy 9th of July today with the stock market's record-winning streak continuing. Stocks moving mostly higher with the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ ending the day higher, good enough for record highs. The Dow, though, moving lower for the second day in a row. The S&P 500 came in with a closing gain of 4 points to a new record high close at 55,077. The NASDAQ moved up 26 points to 18,429. And the Dow was off 53 points at the close, although it was higher early on. This as investors took in the latest comments from Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, who was on Capitol Hill today in the spotlight, did a little to shake up market bets that Fed policymakers may soon be able to start cutting interest rates, possibly as soon as September. Chairman Powell said elevated inflation is not the only risk the economy is facing, though, and the Fed policymakers are paying closer attention to the cooling job market these days. Yep. Chairman Powell also said he would not be sending any signals about the timing of future interest rate actions, but warned that reducing policy restraint too late or too little could weaken economic activity and employment. We did see some reaction in the bond market today with the yield on the 10-year note, which impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates out there, rising slightly to 4.30%. Stocks did move higher as the chairman gave his testimony. Chairman Powell said he would not be sending any signals about the timing of future interest rate actions. That was interesting. Chairman Powell's remarks also made some market participants more confident in their forecast for September rate reduction. Fed funds futures now indicate a 70% chance that the Fed will lower its benchmark interest rate in September by a quarter percentage point. One of the biggest potential pitfalls for the market would be this week's inflation report that could surprise to the upside. We're going to be getting a new reading on Thursday on inflation. Bitcoin reacting to Fed Chairman Powell's comments on news that he's paying more attention to the labor market. Bitcoin did move a bit higher today to around 57,250. And, of course, Bitcoin has seen a rough month of July so far. Oil back in the spotlight on tensions in the Middle East, as well as Hurricane Beryl, which weakened into a tropical depression, blamed for deaths of several people in Texas and at least one person in Louisiana. After making landfall as a Cat 1 hurricane on the Texas coast, Beryl has pummeled the Lone Star State, Texas, knocking out power to millions of people and leaving destruction in its wake, and, of course, shutting down the oil industry. Crude oil futures today moving slightly higher in New York, just below $82 a barrel. President Biden's fitness to serve under scrutiny following his debate performance against former President Trump recently. Biden now being put to the test again this week at the NATO summit in Washington. Meanwhile, China reportedly building a new military spy base near a U.S. base in the Caribbean. China and Belarus are conducting joint military exercises next to the NATO and EU borders. I'll discuss what's happening on the geopolitical front today with Gordon Chang, China expert and author of The Coming Collapse of China, the Great U.S.-China Tech War, and on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Gordon G. Chang. Crime, of course, still a big issue here, and a homeowner in the San Fernando Valley opened fire on burglars in his home, striking one of them. At least one other got away. I'll discuss the latest crime reports and also the impact on business here in Los Angeles with the Honorable Dennis Zine, former Los Angeles City Council member, former LAPD sergeant, and current LAPD Reserve Officer. Dennis Zine will be on the line later this hour. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, the Fed chair's appearance in Capitol Hill, and the whole works today. Joining us live now, Brian Perry, Chief Investment Strategist and Portfolio Manager at Mint Asset Management at mintassetmanagement.com, also author of the 25% Cash Machine. Brian, thank you very much for taking the call here. Another record-shattering day for the S&P 500 and for the NASDAQ. The Fed chairman in the spotlight. Give us your assessment of things here at the moment.
Thank you, Frank. It's only Tuesday, and so much for investors to chew on, so much for easygoing summer rhythms here when it comes to the stock market. Usually, this is a quiet time coming into the latter part of July, but there's a lot happening here that deserves investors' attention here. Certainly, you noted Fed Chair Powell on the hot seat today in front of the Senate Finance Committee here, trying to address a number of things here which are on people's minds here coming into election season. You just have a lot of challenges here with energy, food prices, healthcare, professional services that are, on people's minds heavily, even though they're not factored into the core CPI rates and other types of PCE. So it's really what matters most to consumers, but at the same time, the inflation numbers that the Fed is looking for are drawn off other components here. The other side is we've got this mega cap artificial intelligence rally that's still cooking, and we also saw some other sectors start to participate later in the week here, last week and into this week here with notable moves here in industrials and some retail financials, some healthcare, consumer discretionary, and communication stocks all participating to the upside to help boost the market here to new all-time highs. So this is an interesting time. At the same level here with the market at new highs, the trend is very evident here that the jobs are starting to soften here. And this is one thing that Powell brought up today was, we got to catch the labor market right here. This is where it's moving in the direction they wanted, and that's to cool off. But, once a trend starts, it can pick up speed. So this is a growing, talking point here for those on the street here in terms of, labor's coming in. So what does that do to consumer spending? What does that do to GDP growth? Because we're a consumer-driven economy, and we got to, certainly bring rates down in coordination and concert with a softening, so that we don't move into a recession and we have what is, this soft landing narrative plays out to what they hope to. Bond yields bumped higher today with today's $58 billion 3-year Treasury note auction here. Again, these are big numbers coming out to finance the U.S. debt. And we got, as you noted, the Consumer Price Index coming out here Thursday, the Producer Price Index coming out Friday, and actually due out tomorrow. And then the economists are looking for also the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Survey on Friday. So that coming into play here. Now we get into the earnings season here, which really starts here late this week here. You've got Delta Airlines, and you've got Pepsi and Progressive, Bank of New York, Mellon, J.P. Morgan, Wells Fargo, all posting their numbers by Friday afternoon. So the market's leadership has been led certainly by the Magnificent Seven and other big cap tech darlings, they'll start posting here July 22nd their numbers here. So I would not be surprised, Frank, to see somewhat of a buy the rumor, sell the news reaction out of this market here coming into August, because typically August and September are historically two of the toughest months of the year for the market to perform.
Not to mention October, right?
Oh, yeah. That's out there, too.
Yeah, a lot of big events happen in October, looking back over the years. On the air live with investment expert Brian Perry with the Mint Asset Management and author of the 25% Cash Machine. You touched on it briefly. The Magnificent One, NVIDIA, participating in today's record-shattering rally of more than $3 at $131 and change. And Apple continues on a roll here, up nearly $1 today at $228.68. What are your thoughts about NVIDIA and Apple?
It's incredible here what's going on. There was a report out that from one of the larger hedge fund managers that there's been over $100 trillion invested in technology since the PC was basically born. And this whole change to the AI GPU systems around the world it's going to be in the trillions of dollars. So this is still relatively in the early innings here of the whole AI cycle here, the whole refresh cycle, if you will, Frank, for all things that are computerized. So with NVIDIA here, their channel checks by UBS came out yesterday afternoon, that confirmed that demand momentum for the next gen Blackwell, what they call the rack scale stack systems, which is all their chips in a rack, it remains exceedingly robust, forecasting $5 a share for the stock in 2025. That puts the stock at just 26 times earnings here. They said the pipeline for NVIDIA chips is materially larger than just 2 months ago, as hyperscaler budgets are just really firming up. There's a tremendous amount of money being dedicated toward upping the AI the play here, with Microsoft certainly being the biggest customer in the world. So this is interesting, where people are wondering about what I would do with NVIDIA here. I think don't be cute about it. The stock was up today. It looks like some new price hikes here came in today at 150 to 180. Stock's at 132 spot 23, and the high price target on the street is 200. it looks very doable at this point in time here with other names in that sector like Super Microcomputer and Dell and other names here which are along for this ride. So I'm still a big holder of NVIDIA here. It's my largest position.
On there live with Brian Perry, and of course, for anyone that's been taking a nap for the last month or so, NVIDIA did have that 10-for-1 stock split, so now it's trading after today's bounce up 318 to close at 131.38 at the close. And we had that big Hollywood deal here with Paramount being bought up, Skydance, and looks like if this goes through, it'll be taken out at the Class B shares of Paramount will be taken out at 15.
Every week, Michael Rosenbaum is getting deep with someone new on the Inside of You podcast.
Let's get inside of Kevin Smith.
I can go to a movie and enjoy it, and I'm never like, I could have done that better.
Really?
Never. I started as a fan. I'll finish as a fan. And the difference between this iteration of Kevin Smith at age 53 and the one that most people met at the beginning of my career, back then, I would have told you all the movies that I hate, and here are the reasons why they suck. And you would never hear that from me today.
Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum, wherever you listen.
Dollars a share. The stock actually moved lower yesterday on that news. Moved slightly higher today and is still at around 11.53 here. I see at the close of 35 cents. Is it a slam dunk that it's going to be taken out at $15 a share here, Brian? What do you make of this deal in the Paramount stock here?
Yeah, I think it's going to get taken out of that level, Frank. You know, you've got just it's down time. Time is against the stock here simply because it's an arbitrage deal. So you had to, if you think you're going to get 15 and stock trades at 12, it's a pretty good return. Not knowing when the deal is actually going to get, close for sure. But you have, this is still a company here that has to go up against, some major players here, which I think is still going to struggle against Netflix, for instance. Netflix is pushing higher. It's into it's trying to clear 700 here, where Paramount was, trading multiples higher than where it currently trades today. So between Paramount, Peacock, and other names that wannabes that want to be in that space of Amazon Prime and Netflix, they've got a lot of work to do, Frank. And I just don't see it really being that excited of a stock to even be. And even for the arbitrage play here between 12 and to 15, I think there's just other ways to, and the deal could, who knows, it looks like it's a done deal, but you never know till it closes. So I would be in a void right here and take your $12 and try something else.
All right. And what about crypto here? Looks like this correlation, which has often been talked about with the NASDAQ and Bitcoin has not been happening lately, with the NASDAQ hitting record highs, Bitcoin well off its all-time high. In fact, actually dipping lately right now above 57, just below 58,000 here. Taking a look at it now, what are your thoughts on what's happening in the crypto world here?
Well, I think the whole Mt. Gox exchange, situation here, which really allowed a lot of recovered coins here that were basically bought in the $400 to $500 range have been sold into the market here. So people are buying second homes and all kinds of great things, from their Bitcoin that's now worth, 100-fold higher than where it's traded, in the past. So that was a lot of coin that came back to the market here, and I think a lot of it got dumped into the market here, and Bitcoin does drive the bus. So what's good for Bitcoin is great for cryptos, and when Bitcoin's under pressure, it all comes apart, broadly, in the whole crypto space, maybe for the exception of a couple. But I started buying Bitcoin today, Frank. I think that this is all priced in, and I do like the longer term, promise of the Bitcoin trade altogether. So down here at 55, it started to show a bid here, and it was up, nicely here going into most of the afternoon. So I think you've got a lot of long-term money that here starting to buy this Bitcoin trade down here in the mid $55,000 area. I was one of them.
What about Ethereum, which got a buzz on possible ETFs being approved at some point soon? And Ethereum was also seen a big hit lately, trading now just above 3,000.
Very much so. No, you had Ethereum trade from literally 2,200 to 3,500. On that move of the announcement that they were going to be, the SEC was going to start to clear, ETFs, spot ETFs for Ethereum, and it's come in here, to trade now. It got as low as around 2,650 or so thereabouts. So again, those that want to play that trade, that's fine. And just like Bitcoin, the idea was to buy it into the listings and then sell it right as they started listing this. So that's probably a similar type of trade. You may get this move up here back up to 3,500 from this 27 level, and that's that to me is a good trade. But I still like the longer term prospects of Solana as in terms of utility as opposed to Ether. So I would just trade Ether, but I would also look at Solana here on the pullback as a longer term, more viable and just a more futuristic crypto.
All right. At this point, Brian Perry, where are you putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Well, there's a whole lot of things going on here, and you watch the option market here, and there's just a tremendous amount of activity here, which tells you, where we're at in some of these inflated stocks here. The putting on here, I've started buying On Holdings here, which most of the people know this is this really hot tennis shoe company here. It's a great runner shoe. The winner of the Boston Marathon was wearing On shoes. The symbol's ONON, and coming into the summer games here, I think you're going to see this brand highly profiled in the Olympic Games. Stock ran up on big earnings here. It's pulled back nicely here, so I think you can pick up On down here in the $37 range here, and I think it trades to 45 to 50. Certainly Robinhood here. If you like the crypto trade, then certainly look at a couple of the stocks that are where there's a lot of emphasis on crypto here. So Robinhood trades around 22 to 23. That looks good here. Again, in the AI space here, Broadcom made a big move higher and pulled back here, so AVGO looks good. Dell Technologies, DELL. Micron here has pulled way back off of its earnings high, MU. So those all look good to me right now. And you know what? Berkshire Hathaway, it's been trading in a sideways pattern here for about 3 months. Their biggest position is Apple. It's 40% of the portfolio. It used to be 50%, but they pulled off. They sold 10% in the first quarter. When Apple here now trading at 228, and we're going through this again, this refresh cycle, a lot of price target increases here this week to 250 to 260. That has to be good for Berkshire Hathaway, BRKB. And just in the energy patch here, I do like Weatherford, WFRD, which is a deep water driller. Very well managed company here. Coming off, Tesla here has moved up like 90% since the beginning of the year, and I think you sell the rip. This is a lot of short covering in here, and there's a tremendous amount of put buying up in this space. It's gone literally vertical here in the last 3 or 4 weeks. So as a trade, I would take Tesla off here and look for a nice pullback here. And then certainly the QSRs, the quick service restaurants here, huge price war going on here. I sold my position in Chipotle today. This is probably the best managed of all of them, but you just got a real price war going on here. And McDonald's breaking down, all the big names are breaking down. So I don't like that. And then certainly I like the pair trade with selling Starbucks and then going long Dutch Brothers, BROS here. I think that's a really good place for people that are looking for the next thing where people will still buy a great cup of coffee somewhere, but they want to go to the hot place, and that's Dutch Brothers.
See and be seen at that place, all right?
Right, yeah.
That's a big thing here in Hollywood, of course, as you know. Brian Perry, thank you very much, as always, for that very thoughtful and thorough assessment of the markets and the economy. We always appreciate it. Brian Perry, Chief Investment Strategist and Portfolio Manager at Mint Asset Management at mintassetmanagement.com, also author of the 25% Cash Machine. Brian, have a great rest of the week, and look forward to speaking with you again very soon.
Do the same. Thanks, Frank.
Thanks again very much. 790 KBC welcomes. Want to take a guest? Ziggy Marley. Yep, Ziggy Marley coming to the Pacific Amphitheater July 18th. Tickets are on sale now. And right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-795-2222. You can get a pair of tickets to the show if you're caller number 9. Tickets furnished by the Pacific Amphitheater in Costa Mesa. Call right now, 1-888-795-2222. Motaca Money continues here in 790 KBC. Mixed finish to the day on Wall Street, but another record-shattering day for both the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. The Dow, which had been in positive territory, pulling back at the close. The NASDAQ moving up 26 points, settling at 18,429. That's a record high. The S&P 500 of 4 at 5,577, also making it a new record high at the close. And the Dow was higher, but down 53 points at the bell today, back to 39,292. The yield in the 10-year note now at 4.30%. Gold moving higher, rebounding from yesterday's more than $30 drop, up about $240 right now at $2,370.30 an ounce. NVIDIA, once again popping, as we just talked about with Brian Perry, at more than $3 today at $131 and change. Apple up nearly $1 at $228 and change. Paramount Global Class B shares up 35 cents at $11.53. Checking the cryptos now, we see a Bitcoin up about $40 at $57,909. Ethereum pulling back about $10 now at $3,054, and Doge at 11 cents. Motaca Money continues here, 790 KABC, staying on top of the crime situation here in Los Angeles, impacting homeowners and businesses. The latest, as you might have heard, a homeowner in the San Fernando Valley opened fire on burglars in his home, striking one of them. At least one other got away. Let's bring in the Honorable Dennis Zine now, former L.A. City Council member, former LAPD sergeant, and current LAPD Reserve Officer. Dennis Zine is on the line, back with us here on Motac on Money and 790 KABC. Dennis Zine, thank you very much.
You met Lala Kent on Vanderpump Rules. Now Lala and her friends share everything on Give Them Lala.
Osha now knows the name of the baby.
No Amazon lines for that
impromptu.
one.
No. She's going to leak it.
Oh, if she tries to, I'm not letting her because she will leak the name.
And she says it.
She goes, this would look so great for baby S.
Little baby Stephanie? Stephanie? No. People are still guessing. The most recent was Stone.
Oh, that's the name of my son.
Stone? Stone.
Watch what Lala is talking about on YouTube or search for Give Them Lala wherever you listen.
For taking the call here and your reaction to this latest report.
Frank, it doesn't surprise me, and people become victimized more and more over and over, and it's the revolving door. It's like a merry-go-round. It just continues. I received some state statistics from the state of California Department of Justice, and it shows violent crime reported. This is Los Angeles County, not the city, but the entire county, all the cities in LA County. It shows that violent crime is up 12%, robberies in the county up 16%, property crimes up 20%, shoplifting, which we know smash and grabs are out of control, up 133%, auto theft up 23%, and burglaries 8%. We know that it's all increasing. It's not going down. You've got Gascon, who doesn't want to prosecute. You've got criminals that run rampant through the cities, through the county. And these are county statistics. And the LAPD, the Sheriff's Department, local agencies are to the max as far as what they have as resources, the dwindling resources. And what we have is the listeners, KBC listeners, continually being victimized, whether their home's broken into or the catalytic converter stolen or they're accosted on the street and they're robbed. It just continues. And until we make some changes, this trend is going to continue and it's not going to stop. We have many times when people call 911, they will wait and wait and wait for that 911 call to be answered because they're so short of dispatchers. And then if they get a dispatcher, they don't have units to respond. And sometimes it takes an hour for a unit to get to a location. This is absolutely unconscionable that we are dealing with this. And on top of that, I read a report today that the County Board of Supervisors want to expand the County Board of Supervisors. They want to put more bureaucracy instead of services to the taxpayers. We don't need more politicians. We don't need more bureaucracy. What we need is a lean machine that serves the taxpayers, the potholes in the road, the homeless population. I can go on and on for hours and hours and hours, but your listeners see it. They believe in it, and they see it every day. When's it going to get better? Well, I'll tell you, the way we're going, it's not going to get better. It's just going to continue to get worse. And I was interesting. I have a neighbor. They sold their home. They live across the street from me. They sold their home. They moved to Vegas. They said, we can't take it anymore. They sold their home and they moved to Vegas. This is what's happening with Los Angeles County, and then the Board of Supervisors want to add more politicians. So, Frank, it's not getting better. And I hope that this individual that shot the burglar, a daytime burglary at the residence, doesn't face any consequences. And I will warn people that if you use deadly force, you make sure your life's in jeopardy. You can't just go shooting people because they're breaking in your house. You've got to be fearful of your life if you're going to be able to sustain staying out of jail, not getting arrested for shooting someone. You just can't arbitrarily do that. A lot of people get in CCWs carrying guns, but be very, very careful if you decide to pull that trigger. There are serious consequences. You've got to make sure that you feel your life's in danger before you pull that trigger.
As appears to be the case here, and it looks like at least one suspect still being sought by the LAPD in that situation. We're on the air live with the Honorable Dennis Zine, former Los Angeles City Council member, longtime LAPD sergeant, current LAPD Reserve officer. And And you mentioned the homeless situation. We did get those new numbers recently showing the homeless count at or near the all-time high we hit last year, officially down just about 200, but obviously still above 75,000, at or near the record high, given the margin of error in that survey that they take every year. Dennis Zine, we've seen homeless involved in more crime along the beach, Venice and Santa Monica areas. Been focusing on that with tragic consequences lately. What are your thoughts about the latest homeless count and what's happening in the beach areas?
Well, Frank, if you participate in the homeless count, which I've participated in every single homeless count, you drive around at night with individuals, 3 in a car. One's watching, one's driving, one's keeping tab. You see a motorhome. You don't know how many people are in it. You're guessing. The whole thing is so flawed. Those statistics are so flawed. There's no realism. We know that the homeless population is increasing, not decreasing. What they do is they try to sell a bill of goods to the taxpayers so they'll spend more money. But that is a very flawed way. And they say that it's not accurate. Clearly, from my participation in every single homeless count, it is totally inaccurate. You're guessing. You're doing it at night. You don't talk to the people. You don't shine a flashlight on the people. You don't interfere with what they're doing. And it's really a flawed system, but they try to pull the wool over the public's eyes because they'll support more money. We've spent billions upon billions upon billions of dollars, and the situation is not improving. I have no confidence at all when they come out with these numbers. Those numbers are skewed numbers, and they want to show they've had some impact. The impact is marginal, if any, and what the homeless do basically move from one location to another. The listeners know from the neighborhoods they work and live in, they know the reality. So don't believe what they're telling you that the homeless numbers are down. They are not down. They are up, and they're continuing to increase.
One other important point that was made on this program just yesterday, we've been shocked to see the homeless children in the newspapers, photos shown of homeless children, and the point was made that that's unlawful to have a child in that kind of a situation and to be endangered like that. Dennis, what is your expert advice when you see something like that?
Well, that needs to be reported to Children's Services. Children's Services will take care of the children who are homeless. I mean, that is a tragedy for parents to do that to children. And I know there's places where we see that happen. If the parents can't provide for the child, then the county can provide for the child. But that's a real tragedy when we see the homeless children. Absolute tragedy.
On the air live with the Honorable Dennis Zine. And let me ask you about another important issue that we've been talking about. By the way, the Southgate Police Officers Association, I see, has just officially endorsed Nathan Hochman for Los Angeles County District Attorney. He was on this program recently, and so was Rick Caruso, who recently endorsed Nathan Hochman as well. We have an important election coming up here in November. The incumbent, George Gascon, facing veteran prosecutor Nathan Hochman. Give us your thoughts about that upcoming race.
Well, I've met with Nathan. I've spoken to him. I know Gascon from his time with the LAPD. It's time for a change. Clearly, it's time for a change. The statistics show in Los Angeles County the crime's going up. Gascon has a policy, a philosophy, don't lock people up. Lock people up, no, that's not good. Let them roam free. Let them terrorize the community. Jackie Lacey, former district attorney, Steve Cooley, former district attorney, many law enforcement agencies supporting Nathan. He's a good man. He's a former federal prosecutor. We need to make a change. If we go down the same trend with Gascon's failed policies, it's just going to get worse. He's got 98% of his employees who vote against him. It's incredible that he has an operation in place, and he's absolutely incompetent to do the job of protecting listeners and protecting people in Los Angeles County. He's incapable of doing it because of his policies that make no sense. Let the criminal run free and terrorize the law-abiding citizenry.
On there live with Dennis Zine, and I want to ask you about this very serious crime that happened in Orange County, apparently involving some people from the Los Angeles area. 3 men accused of killing an elderly woman at a Newport Beach shopping mall there. Shocked the community there in Orange County. Now the 3 suspects reportedly refused to leave their jail cells to face murder charges in court. Give us your reaction to this horrific crime that took place there and the suspects involved.
Well, a tragic crime for an individual who didn't deserve to go through that torture, that punishment, that death, and her family members. But I know that Todd Spitzer is a man who's a man of law and order. He's a district attorney in Orange County. I wish he was in Los Angeles County. Todd Spitzer will make sure that justice is served. Todd Spitzer does a great job providing public service, and he believes that criminals have to pay a price for their violent actions. Orange County does not tolerate what LA County does, but I'm sure that with Todd Spitzer as the DA of Orange County, justice will prevail, and he will make sure it prevails. He's a man who I've known for many, many years. He has a career in law enforcement as a reserve officer at one time. He believes in victims having the right to be safe in a society, and he does a wonderful job in Orange County. I wish we had some of him in Los Angeles County, and justice will be served with that particular district attorney doing his job. Todd Spitzer does a great job down there. That will be done.
The Honorable Dennis Zine, former Los Angeles City Council member, former Los Angeles Police Department Sergeant, and current LAPD Reserve Officer. Dennis Zine, thanks for coming to the line.
My pleasure. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you very much. Motaco Money continues here in 790 KABC. Turning now to geopolitics. President Biden's fitness to serve under scrutiny again following his debate performance against former President Trump. Biden's being put to the test this week at the NATO summit in Washington. The summit coming at a trying moment for the Biden presidency, with several Democratic House members publicly calling on him to quit his campaign. Other lawmakers in private conversations have reportedly urged him to step aside, and several high-profile donors have raised concerns about his viability in the race against former President Trump. Meanwhile, China reportedly building a new military spy base near a U.S. base in the Caribbean. China and Belarus are conducting joint military exercises next to the NATO and EU borders as this big NATO summit gets underway in Washington. Let's bring in Gordon Chang now, China expert and author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War, and on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon Chang, thank you very much for coming to the line here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank.
All right, let's start with the NATO summit. Any big news out of there yet that's caught your attention?
Well, there's no news yet, but tomorrow there certainly will be. And people, of course, focus on President Biden's capacity, but I don't think the NATO summit's going to be doing that. They have been firmly behind President Biden because he is firmly behind the alliance. So I don't think that that's going to be a major issue in the two-day meeting.
President welcoming the NATO leaders to Washington, of course, and today, and also celebrating their unity against Russia's Ukraine aggression. So that's obviously top of mind. But also we got NATO forces in the area of China as well these days, right? Asserting international maritime rights. And we've seen European NATO vessels go through the waterways there. Tell us about NATO's role along Taiwan and China these days.
Well, occasionally you will see European ships of NATO members in the Taiwan Strait, in the South China Sea, because this whole issue has been internationalized, and so therefore this will continue. You know, China complains that NATO is out of its area of responsibility. But the point right now is that China, because it's supporting Russia's war effort in Ukraine, is actually a main threat to Europe in Europe. So really what NATO is doing is it's basically replying in kind to the Chinese.
Given what happened with President Biden in that debate and questions about his condition, really, have we seen any moves made by China since then?
Well, the official Chinese reaction came from the Chinese embassy in Washington, and a spokesman talked about it was wrong for both candidates to include China in their discussion. But on Chinese social media, we have seen the political warfare machine, and it's not been so much talking about President Biden's mental capacity. It was basically an attack on Western democracy. That essentially the U.S. democracy these days is two old men, as they put it. So really it's been an attack on the United States more than an attack on either candidate.
On there live with China expert Gordon Chang. Want to get your reaction to this other report. I mentioned China reportedly building a new military spy base near a U.S. base in the Caribbean. What's your reaction to that, and what do we know about that?
Well, we know that China is building a training facility, as they call it, in Cuba. And that is important because China already has 3 listening posts and perhaps a 4th one in Cuba. And they're intercepting communications from all across the United States. So basically what China wants to do is to be able to, first of all, surveil the U.S., but also to disrupt military movements of equipment from, for instance, the East Coast to Asian waters. And so they've been working very hard on the Panama Canal. They've been working very hard in other Latin American countries, and they've been quite successful in penetrating those countries, of course, especially Cuba.
What kind of reaction have we seen by this administration on this big news?
The administration's been very quiet. The news about the new 4th Chinese listening post plus the new Chinese training facility, as they call it, really came from the Wall Street Journal. We've seen very little from the administration on this. And that's sort of in line with the administration's posture towards China to try to tamp. And so, therefore, we're going to see probably more disclosures from the media than we will from the Biden administration.
And China and Belarus reportedly conducting joint military exercises next to the NATO and EU borders. So certainly NATO's keeping an eye on that. Tell us what we need to know about these exercises there.
Yeah, the joint China-Belarus military exercises are within 5 kilometers of Poland. And that clearly is very worrying to not only Poland, but to NATO as a whole. Belarus, remember, allowed its territory to be used by the Russians as a staging area for the attack on Ukraine. China has been supporting the Russian war effort across the board. So we shouldn't be surprised that you have 2 supporters of the Russian war effort, Belarus and China, participating in these joint exercises.
That's big news. Chinese troops along the Polish border. That's I've never heard of such a thing.
Yes, and if you had talked about this a couple of years ago, people would have said we're crazy. But China has made it very clear that it intends to deploy its military across the world, and we're going to see more headlines like this.
Gordon Chang, thank you very much for taking the call on these underreported big stories here, and we appreciate your insights as always. Gordon G. Chang on X, formerly known as Twitter, Gordon G. Chang. That is China expert Gordon Chang, author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War. Gordon, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank.
Coming up next, the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang, and I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon right here. Motec on Money, 790 KBC.
Welcome to Talkville, the ultimate Smallville rewatch podcast. Let's get into season 4, episode 21, Forever.
Is there a button we can hit that just skip?
I know. What I'm surprised about, and I don't think there's anything he could have done, but James Marshall directed this, and he's directed so many great episodes.
It's collecting the paycheck.
This would have been an epic episode if somehow it was Lex Luthor's high school experience at graduation.
Binge seasons 1 through 4 of Talkville before season 5 begins, wherever you listen.